Let's just kick off on the shilling because the concern is we're seeing this weakness continue and persist on the shilling front. Is the CBK looking to step in and limit the falls? I mean, what are your thoughts on the direction for the unit right now?
We always knew that the CBK will always have trouble maintaining its the shilling at 85, 86, simply because of the growth in money supply that we had been seeing in the trend coming in from around September thereabouts, and without it has given the data because of there's a gap in data, but nevertheless we think that it didn't slow down the rate of growth of M3 because the latest MPC meeting they lowered CBR, which is an indication of certainly a looser policy. And because of that, we knew that the shilling is going to face some weakness going forward.
But is it stable right now at these levels?
Well, I don't think at this point that the government, or rather the central bank, selling dollars will make much of a difference. I think they will probably be overwhelmed by the market. I think what they need to do now is do a little bit of tactical tightening. We know that it will raise interest rates in the securities, in the bonds, in the fixed income markets. But I think that's a price to pay for maintaining stability in the currency front.
Now, one of the positives of reducing the interest rate is, of course, the knock-on effect it has to demand for credit, and it's also had a knock-on effect to the construction sector. And interesting, in the property space, we're seeing rents increasing as a result of the kind of increased affordability, I suppose, of renting. What are your thoughts on the numbers coming through from Has Consult today, showing that 16% increase in overall rents for 2012? Do you think that that's going to persist this year?
I've not looked at those numbers yet critically. However, we know that the real estate market went through some tough times last year. But for us, we thought that the interest rates brought a bit of sanity into the real estate markets, because we think there's quite a bit of speculation going on in that industry, which is largely, I think, in my opinion, becoming unhealthy. Mm-hmm. So probably we need to moderate that, because the low interest rate suggests that we have more savings than we really do. Then we need to boost our savings levels to a level where that is economically sufficient to finance future investments. So for us, the concern is not so much that we're not so much concerned about growth as quality of growth. We think if the growth is moderated, you'll have a more sustainable long-term growth path.
Let's talk about the equity market, because 15 million shares of Safaricom moving through the market today, and that's pretty much representing a large chunk of trade, or almost 2/3 of trade on the day. But what stood out for you when it comes to movements stock-wise today? Because overall that blue chip index is up by 1% today.
Yeah, in terms of volume, you're right. Safaricom probably could have taken the cake, but it's a stable stock, many shares. But in terms of volume, in terms of turnover, EABL today was higher. Again, for both stock, incidentally, you have foreigners moving the stock, most of it, with EABL looking at more than around 100% of purchases being foreign. Safaricom a little bit lower, but of course greater than 50%.
So foreigners are driving the market, and let's talk about some M&A activity that's being reported, because it looks like there could be a reverse takeover of City Trust, and City Trust stock rallying on the back of that news. So what's the latest on that? I mean, who's eyeing the company, and how could this impact the overall, because that's an investment holding company, and then you've got a bank looking to take that over. I mean, how's this all going to play out, do you think?
Well, it's going to be a no cash deal, swap shares for shares, where City Trust will issue new shares in exchange for 100% of I&M Bank's shares. Then thereafter there'll be a split, which also has its own value in terms of rallying the market, which will excite. We expect that to excite shareholders. So right now it's trading come split for that purpose of facilitating the takeover and the share swap. Mm-hmm. So the largest shareholders in I&M Bank, that's the bank that is going to be the negotiations are with right now. The I&M Bank will the biggest shareholders in I&M Bank will go and be the biggest shareholders in City Trust. Mm-hmm. And right now City Trust owns about 7.2% of I&M Bank. So already they've got a foot in, and I think it makes everything a bit easier. But the value of I&M has largely been carried by the value of City Trust has been largely been carried by than by I&M Bank. So yeah. I think that benefits everybody on board.
I mean, what this ultimately also means, if you had to look at the overall sector, the banking sector, is the introduction of a new bank, which has previously not been listed to the market. I mean, how would you evaluate the prospects for this and the investment case for I&M if this reverse takeover goes through, relative to the likes of Equity Bank and the suspects that we used to investing or talking about on the Kenyan market?
Well, incidentally, we looked at the valuations, and thankfully we've got quite a number of banks that have been listed. The closest being Diamond Trust, which closely mimics the I&M Bank. But generally speaking, we like the valuations. I think it's around twice 2012 book value. Which is fair. I've got quite a number of banks trading at higher multiples than that. So and perhaps maybe the mitigate the one factor that we've noted is that it had a return on equity of in 2012 of about 23%. Mm-hmm. That's a bit lower than most of those banks that we would probably compare with. But again, the lower multiple, fits in the story. So largely, we are happy with it. We know it's a growing bank. It's got a lot of potential. So it's a stock that will probably pull a lot of investors to it. It's regionally diversified. It's got a branch all the way in Mauritius. Got one in Tanzania, Rwanda. So regional bank, you could call it a regional bank. Again, lots of potential, and I think it's a good addition to the stock market.